When asked about foot fetishism, Tarantino responded, "I don't take it seriously. There's a lot of feet in a lot of good directors' movies. That's just
give me
good
a
direction."
break.
Today we discuss Inglourious Basterds as we wrap our Tarantino arc. We're coming off a rather disappointing Kill Bill review, and now here we are with Inglourious Basterds. So, Thorin, did this revive your appreciation of Tarantino, or did this color your take?
Assuming people have gone in order and they've already seen the Kill Bill episode, which they will know was actually quite jarring. Like, it's not like Kill Bill is a movie itself from the night. Like, I actually thought I remembered Kill Bill quite well, but I was genuinely shocked, especially when we did it as Tarantino originally designed, to watch all as one film. I actually thought all as one film made it even worse. It had a lot of problems. And so people will know I was very harsh on that episode. This isn't as bad, but I've got to say the most shocking thing is, doing this arc, I was already like a little bit of a Tarantino skeptic. Like I say, I was more like first half. What half? It's like the first two movies are unbelievable. Jackie Brown's pretty good. I've still got like a soft spot for that. After that, it's just diminishing returns for me. Except, I guess it's not like a pure linearity, because Kill Bill was before this, and I do think this is better than Kill Bill. But like, maybe this is his best latter-day film, but I did think this film had a lot of problems. Like this did sort of low-key make me think, like, wait a minute, do I think Tarantino's a fraud? Because before I would have never said that. Like, I've told you, he's one of the people where I'll probably watch every film he makes. I know he's not going to make any more now, but he's one of those people where I would have given you the pass still. He kept watching all the films, especially if they have interesting premise. This one, though, I'm shocked, because actually, at the time this came out, this was hailed as like it's going to be like an instant classic. I actually did remember it being better when I watched it, even. I think maybe it's just things like some of the performances I remember, but I actually didn't think it held up that well as a film. Like, I at the end, I am quite cynical. I do think it's mainly like Christoph Waltz, some of the comedy elements, the unique, let's say, ending that you wouldn't normally have. And if there's certain parts have a charm to it, but I do also think this movie, pretty sweet. I've heard a lot of modern day people and Zoomer people think this is mega, like this is their favorite Tarantino film or something. That take now is kind of a bit shocking, unless they maybe themselves never rewatched it. I don't know.
Or maybe they hadn't seen his original movies. I mean, I think what's interesting about this film is that this is why we picked this one is it's a more contemporary Tarantino film. And people might say, well, why not, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? It was pretty popular
when it came out, too. I feel like this one was probably...
Yes, it's still very popular.
This one was hailed as like a big movie, I remember.
Yeah, it's still really popular. And to me, this is where he stops. Kill Bill, we talked about how in Kill Bill in his earlier films, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, he's remixing cinema histories, like a DJ sampling cinema. And this is where he starts remixing actual history, which is something that continues in Django Unchained.
He would say that like he had a realization when he was high in the kitchen. So like, I've been remixing cinema history. What if I remix history? So like,
I think that's what he actually had a revelation to do.
In the scene when he's in the kitchen, he looks over, and then next to, the Kubrick book and the fucking Hitchcock, he just sees a knob. He sees like Encyclopedia Britannica, is world history. And he goes, what if I remix history? I guess Hollywood will do it like his story, man, like some shit like that.
But that's really what starts happening, because when we get to Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, this theme continues where he is now blending and rewriting chapters of history into alternate history, and this is kind of his first experiment with that.
By the way, we should even start there. Like, obviously, much like Tarantino, we don't have to go in chronological order of the story. Let's just get people's takes on that aspect. Because here's the thing. I don't dislike the fact that essentially the ending is completely historically inaccurate. And obviously didn't happen because, spoiler, Adolf Hitler didn't die by being blown up inside a cinema at a totally different time in the war in France, did he? But I don't hate that, because actually part of me does think, I'm not against people doing that in films. That's actually quite a cool idea. The idea you could just take a story and change it. Like, the joke is you could do Troy, and at the end Hector just wins, like he should. That would be kind of a cool ending if you didn't know it was coming, right? But I want to get people's take on that, because part of me thinks, like I say, part of it doesn't totally hold together. Part of it's interesting. What do we think of that ending? Because that is his most unique thing he did in this film, was just lead you right up the garden path. Because surely, am I the only one? The first time you saw this film, you didn't know anything about it. You just think that's the tension of the movie, knowing this girl, she can't possibly succeed. We know they don't die in it. So I remember thinking when the thing blows up, like, fuck, that is kind of like a cool gimmick, because I've never seen someone do that, really. Like, just completely intentionally warp the history and just do what you wanted in the end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's kind of cool because it essentially frames this as a uniquely Jewish revenge movie. You know, you think about
which is not something that you see very often. Or
no,
ever.
that's what I mean. Yeah. That's why it's like kind of a curio in cinematic terms, because ultimately you either have you either have the very serious, you know, historical framing of what happened in World War II, like your Schindler's Lists and things such as that, where, you know, Spielberg obviously found that to be a deeply personal project. And obviously it's why that has stood the test of time. And it is almost like now a historical touchstone. It's considered to be, you know, that important a film.
Right. I think most people, when they think of the Holocaust, just think of that film.
Yes.
In their brain,
agreed.
they're playing that as if it was documentary footage.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. And you know, Spielberg did a fantastic job. On the other side, you kind of have also kind of like a semi-glorification of Mossad and the Israeli state in films like Munich, which is also ostensibly a Jewish revenge film.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not in the same way. It doesn't veer into the fantastical. Once again, it's essentially taking very
this is like a Jewish catharsis.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's why I think it's actually for the movie to say the things it wants to say, they sort of do have to kill Hitler here, right? They do have to kill the Nazis here, because ultimately, here's what it's about. It's about how people transform during wartime and what happens when the war ends. The recurring theme, of course, is you get to go back to your life after you've done all these horrendous things. Now, look, we can all have a philosophical debate about whether or not that's fair or just or right, or whether people can be compelled towards evil acts in the interest of self-preservation. We won't muddy the waters with that. Essentially, what this movie sets up as a framework very early on is the Nazis are evil, the Nazis have perpetrated all this evil, and when the war ends, and likely they lose, they will all get to go back to their lives and pretend none of the evil ever happened, which, by the way, was a genuine concern. It's why the Nuremberg trials occurred. There was this international sense that justice had to be done for all the atrocities that the Nazis committed, and it had to be seen by the world. So it's essentially tapping into that. And then obviously, if we don't kill Hitler, we can't have the final scene where Landa, of course, gets his comeuppance. He's played his hand brilliantly. He's done all these evil things, lived as the Jew hunter, and then ultimately negotiated a sweet deal.
By the way, don't you think even
that's
I think that's even like a very misunderstood scene, though, because I always read that scene as actually he wasn't some like ideological Nazi.
No.
He was just kind of a guy who had that position, and by the way, he's really good at it, and he was just kind of reveling in that position. Like you can see at the end, if anything, it seems like he doesn't actually have some like vitriol against people. He just thinks like cynically, I'll just switch sides now, essentially. Yeah.
I mean, I think what's so brilliant about Landa's character, and in relation to what Richard said about the themes of this movie, is that it's about what happens when a sociopath is in war. Right?
People always remember that early scene of like he hiding them, and there's a million memes. But that he's presented as the ultimate Nazi. He isn't really, exactly.
But he's not ideological. You never hear him say anything about being ideologically a Nazi.
And the way he treats that woman, you think he's trying to fake her out. It actually turns out he's just a charismatic guy. Like he just understands it's a weird dynamic in war. Yeah.
So he is taking advantage of the chaos of war in order to climb the ladder of power. And that happens to be with the Nazis at first. And then it happens to be against the Nazis later on. And he realizes, hey, they're probably going to lose this war anyway. How can I take my own biggest advantage in this situation? And so that's what's funny, is that he has the swastika carved into his head, which obviously brings up the Charles Manson stuff, which then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood later used, which I find interesting that he kind of returns to that, as it were. But when you think about swastika carved into a forehead, you think about Charles Manson. And also Charles Manson was not a Nazi, right? For what it's worth. And I think that there is a comparison there between Hans Landa at the end of this and Charles Manson, where they were both sociopathic killers, but they were not Nazis. They were just sociopaths, right? Yeah. And so it's really interesting that they are the ones that are branded forever, scarred as Nazis, when that's not really their greatest sin. I think it's really a fascinating
I think
thing
if
to think
you
about.
wanted to like broadly typify what the meta commentary is, it's ultimately that the amorality of the Nazis did provide a lot of people with opportunity, and it's one of these things that we've largely forgotten about. You know, like the space program, NASA had all of those brilliant German scientists. Well, what do you think they were building during World War II? You know, the V2 rocket, etc. Not only that, I mean, think of all the businesses that got rich because, you know, Hitler was essentially, not among many other things, he was a union buster. He didn't have a lot of time for workers' rights in Germany, and ultimately his promises to modernize the country were predicated along those lines. And so obviously we all know there's a ton of businesses that got rich, made their money, you know, in America, made their money doing business with Nazi Germany at the time, and yet they don't have the swastika carved upon them. In fact, I would wager if you were to list the businesses, many people wouldn't know this, and it's kind of just drifted into history as if it was something that was okay. So
I mean, it's why if anyone remembers that famous one, go on, keep going.
I was going to say, this is also like where it taps into Eichmann, right? Because that's why Eichmann is such a troubling character in Nazi history. And for those of you who don't know, he's the one who is like the chief bureaucrat in charge of the concentration camps. So he was just basically there facilitating logistics. And this is where the phrase banality of evil comes out, because he's not in there killing people, but he is basically the architect of the system. And that's why this is so disturbing, right? Is because he is removed from it, and yet he clearly knows what he's doing, even if he's abstracted. And then that's why you have to put him on trial, right? But it enables people in very weird ways.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Duncan? You said it's like that famous example.
Fuck, what were you saying? What were you talking about just before
we were talking about businesses that got rich.
Oh yeah, I mean that's actually, I know what you mean, Richard, because that is actually the weird thing. Individually, by the way, tons of people obviously got a horrendous come up and say people don't know a lot of German citizens died and were raped and all sorts of crazy shit for years after that. No, but I know what you mean, because actually, like, if you look at like the businesses that worked with the Nazis, it's why actually there was a famous edgy incident, which is one where Russell Brand did that fucking like presentation where he was like a host, and he just mentioned, because they were sponsored by Hugo Boss and this awards, like, you guys made all the outfits. I remember at the time people being like, oh, how can you? It's like, no, you are aware of what he's saying, right? That's a totally valid thing to say. Like, you profited from that, and then later on went on to be super famous as like some tastemakers and stuff like that. That is a real thing. In fact, people often sarcastically comment, isn't one of the coolest things about the Nazis the outfits? Like, it was like the Matrix. They had all the trench coats. It was kind of like a unique aesthetic, wasn't it? No, I know what you mean, because actually,
which shows you how lost in the sauce they were in general, that they were thinking, if we're going to commit atrocities, let's at least look good.
I know. But by the way, that's also another thing actually about this film is you have to even though the joke is it's playing with history, you have to almost take this like it is just a fever dream. Like you said, like a revenge. Essentially, this is like the Jewish version of like a blaxploitation film where they go and kill all the white people in it. Like, they're just that, because the opening scene is even that. Like, I'm sorry, you can't just engage with the opening scene as like, this is real, just acting. This is the thing. Like, that's an inherently absurd scene. Like, it's you couldn't be more over the top in that scene.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. And it's interesting as well, because the opening scene is like, obviously lauded. I mean, it's a brilliant piece of cinema. I mean, we can all agree on that. I think the way it's shot, obviously in that scene, you know, there's several homages going on. I mean, for me, it's kind of clear that the way Tarantino wrote this film is he wrote that scene in his mind and got it so specific, and then essentially the rest of the film is born from that.
I would absolutely guess as much.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Yes.
You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
Yes.
I want to point out, too, that this is the scene that we were complaining isn't in Kill Bill, right?
Yeah.
It's when we talk about Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, both of those films start with these really banal seeming conversations, but that are highly electric in terms of their atmosphere, in terms of what they reveal about the characters. And that's what you get here. And also, it's the sense of underlying malice and dread that permeates a lot of Tarantino's work, because just like you would see in Pulp Fiction with Vega and Jules, right? Vince and Jules at the start. And they're hitmen, they're professional criminals, you have a feeling that they're going to do something bad, or the diamond heist, the diamond robbers in Reservoir Dogs. Now you have the scene where there's a Nazi and you suspect that he's actually found something wrong because he's quite clever. And it's just played in an extremely unnerving way, a game of cat and mouse, the way that, it's brilliant the way that it switches from German to French and then English, because he knows his audience is English. But by switching to English to make his audience more comfortable, he's also hiding information from the other people in the house. So you find out this device later and how clever both, Tarantino, frankly, and Landa are. And it's just, I just wish the rest of this movie was like this scene, because I think this is one of the very best scenes that Tarantino has ever written. And it just, honestly, this scene and the bar scene are the ones that really hold up for me, and I could do without a lot of this movie. I don't like. I like
actually
the end.
think this is not only iconic. I think a lot of people are just only remembering this scene and then maybe the ending.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are missing it. It's also quite a long movie too.
Yeah,
and I like the end with Hans Landa. I really dislike the theater fire ridiculousness at the end, and most of the rest of the end, like the very, very end, that is fine. All of the setup with the movie theater is quite lame, I think. We'll get to that.
It's also, like I say, though, another problem this movie has, and this is a unique to a Tarantino film, I've never heard this in another Tarantino film, is because it has that weird gimmick ending. I do also think the film isn't as good when you rewatch it. Like I say, there's way more tension the first time, because you obviously assume it's going to fail. Like, this is something that doesn't... When you know what they do at the end, look, I enjoy the performances and some of the comedy, but to me, that also made the story not as compelling,
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, look, I'm the guy that's going to stand on business with
How
Tarantino.
much do you, though? Give us that one. If we're sort of a bit out, where are you at on this one? Where does it run the hierarchy, all that jazz?
So we were talking about this before we went live, so I'll just regurgitate it a little bit. And that is that ultimately, for me, what Tarantino did post Death Proof / Grindhouse, he realized he could lean into essentially remaking his favorite pulp movies and directly referencing them for a modern cinematic audience. And if you look at all of them, Inglourious Basterds is essentially his war movie stolen from the 78 movie Inglorious Bastards, which was repackaged as a blaxploitation movie when blaxploitation was popping off, called G.I. Bro, where they edited it to make Fred Williamson the lead, because Fred Williamson was in that. Django Unchained is, like I say, if you wanted to make a Western and you wanted to sell tickets immediately because of how the Italian Westerns were just quick turnover movies, you just called it Django something, The Revenge of Django, A Pistol for Django, A Sonnet for Django, like whatever, right? And that's why Django is just ubiquitous Western protagonist, man. There's only a handful of official Django movies with Franco Nero in them, and obviously he made Django Unchained, where the protagonist is a former slave and black, and again happens to be a revenge movie as well. The Hateful Eight is a really nice slow build, simmering, but probably I could find a movie that directly references. And then obviously Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a direct reference to the Leone Once Upon a Time in the West and Once Upon a Time in America and all of that stuff. And so ultimately what Tarantino is doing in his modern output for me is he is taking some of his favorite cult movies that you might not have seen. He will, in some cases, emulate scenes from those movies.
By the way, for the Hateful Eight, the one you forget, don't people always say that references The Thing, basically? It's like, I think he even implied it.
Yeah. Because obviously it has a similar premise, as in there's people in winter, your isolated location, and they've got motivations that you don't know. Yes. And to that point, he even took the soundtrack from the original thing, exactly, which didn't get used, and he used it in that film, which is a little interesting bit of trivia. But anyway, so he's essentially remaking these films, almost in some cases lifting scenes like he did in Reservoir Dogs. So I honestly think, like put it this way, Inglourious Basterds to me is a superior film to Django Unchained, but which I think has a lot of problems just structurally as a movie, and also it veers into some of Tarantino's worst, habits, in regard to what he do, how he plays around with ideas of race in America. Let's put it that way, and certain words that he likes to use, perhaps a bit too much for a white guy, etc. But Inglorious Bastards beats Django Unchained, but it is a far inferior movie to The Hateful Eight, and I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is as good as Pulp Fiction. So yeah, I really do, and it holds up on several.
In the future,
rewatches.
we have to do like a prestige spit roast, because that's the reverse spit roast. Holy fuck, we should probably schedule that down the line, because that could be a classic. Oh, fuck.
Well, I mean, like, you must like
as good as you even said the fucking line that would be on the box. It's as good as Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Lewis.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
I haven't actually seen it. I when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, because I was living in LA, I had the chance to go see it in 70 millimeter at the Cinerama Dome. So I saw it in one of the really big theaters in LA in 70 millimeter, which it was fine. It was okay, but it certainly did not have that big of an effect on me at the time.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: back to Inglorious Bastards. What this film does, this is just a good time. Like those 70s Italian movies, that it's got a little bit of everything. It's got, first of all, a cinematic masterpiece in its opening scene. I mean, just from a technical viewpoint, the way it's shot, the way everything's introduced, the people under the floorboards looking through the cracks, that is a master director at work. And I defy anybody, that is taught in schools now, as a way to build tension, without having to directly have dialogue or expository dialogue explaining what's happening in the scene. And rightly so. And obviously, it borrows from Leone, that style, that's classic Leone. But also as well, at the end when she's running away, it's like The Searchers. So he's borrowing from the greats, and it really, really shows.
Shosanna!
After that, we're sort of brought back down to earth because, unfortunately, the Inglourious Bastards are introduced. And I'll say this: my biggest problem with the film is the casting. Let's start with the Bear Jew, right? Let's start with that, because that is a problem for me, right? I remember watching this, right, the first time and being like, what giant Jewish guy have they found? They must have found some real muscle-bound dude to play the Bear Jew who beats Nazis to death with a baseball bat. Obviously, you have to bring me some huge muscle-bound guy. There's probably a ton of people that could have played. You're giving me Eli Roth.
It could have been worse. He wanted to cast Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I know. Which the
Bear, I'll give you the
he's
example.
Like 5'8".
I'll tell you from another movie exactly what you talk about, Richard. If anyone's ever seen the film, the Russell Crowe film, Cinderella Man, the antagonist in that movie is a really massive Jewish fighter who's played by Craig Bierko, but they pull it off in that movie. He's way bigger than Russell Crowe. He looks like mad. I know what you mean. I thought someone like that was going to walk out like some fucking ogre cyclops,
especially because they spoil with
some
the bat
fucking
tapping
guy
on the
in it.
brick.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
And by the way, the idea was going to be Adam
ominous.
Sandler. He's lucky that casting never happened. That would actually have ruined this scene completely. Mate.
Oh yeah, completely.
Adam Sandler walks out it'd be like fucking. Is this a joke or something?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously he's friends with Eli Roth, another director, and essentially gave him the role predicated on that. And Eli Roth isn't a good actor. I mean, look, put it this way: he doesn't have to act in this movie, right? It's very over the top, so it's fine. But I mean, put it this way: the German guy that plays Hugo Stiglitz is a German guy called Til Schweiger. and he refused to ever appear in any war movies where he'd have to depict a Nazi because he's like ashamed of Germany's past in that regard, and he didn't want to bring it to life. Also, there are a lot of taboos in German society. It's against the law. When they shot this on location, I believe they had to get all sorts of special permits and stuff. You can't wear the uniform, etc. But anyway, he agreed to wear it in this one because he was explicitly killing Nazis. So he was, and also he's a big, well-cut fucking he's more intimidating. Like Hugo Stiglitz is way more fucking intimidating than Eli fucking Roth. Make him the Bear Jew. Like, just make him the bear. Like, who's putting the bear in Bear Jew in this fucking cast? Do you know what I mean? Because, like, I hate to say it, Eli Roth is just the Jew. Like, there's nothing intimidating about him. So that was problem number one. And like, by the way, I like that scene is fun. It does what it's supposed to do. They're intimidating the Germans. You see that German guy where he says,
that's the exploitation scene. That's your fantasy.
Exactly,
yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And Aldo says, like, this man wants to lay down his life for his country. Oblige him.
By the way,
I love that. That's great. Oblige him is a fire line.
We can't even go past that. There's already my first immediate enormous snicking point. I'm not someone who thinks Brad Pitt's amazing. I definitely don't think he's bad either. He's done some very good films in the 90s and the 2000s. I think he sucks in this film.
I really just like him in this movie.
To me...
Actually, we're all tickled to hear you say that. Quite frankly, watching Donnie beat Nazis to death is the closest we ever get to going to the movies. Donnie!
Yeah?
Guy's German here wants to die for country. Oblige him.
To me, it doesn't even work as a comedic gag. Like, it actually gets really old, that, like, shit accent he's doing. The problem, I think, is this, right? I genuinely can't feel... I feel like him and Tarantino thought these were, like, this gag was landing way harder than I was ever getting. I think even the first time I watched it, I thought that bit was a bit jarring.
Especially by the end, and he's in the movie theater, and he just goes, Buongiorno.
Exactly. That's the problem, Monty. It's the same gag, just over and over again. 50 times in a row.
Buongiorno.
Signori, è un piacere. Gli amici della vedetta ammirata da tutti noi, questa gemma propria della nostra cultura, saranno naturalmente accolti sotto la mia protezione per la durata del loro soggiorno.
Grazie.
Gorlomi? Lo pronuncio correttamente?
Sì, corretto.
Gorlomi? Per cortesia, me lo ripeti ancora.
Gorlami.
Mi scusi, con me?
Gorlami.
Ancora una volta.
Gorlami.
But that is a joke at that point where he's like, because remember they weren't supposed to be doing it originally. I know, so it's written into the story as to why it's ridiculous.
I just don't like the choice.
But to the contrary, I think Brad Pitt is great in this. I think he
as good as Seven. Say the Xbox line.
But what he understands in this performance is the tone.
Okay,
right. He gets what the movie is, and it's a little bit larger than life. Although I will say, considering his backstory, which apparently got written. Which even though Tarantino said he was never going to explain it back because he's got that scar around his neck. Well, apparently he survived the lynching and he was fighting the KKK and enlisted in the army and all this stuff.
That movie sounds better than this one. Make that movie. What the fuck? That sounds so interesting.
Be careful what you wish for. But anyway, he's from the mountains of Tennessee, and the accent's not a million miles off. So, but it is exaggerated.
By the way, one thing we're getting to here as well, and I would put this to you. You explain this. If you love it, you must be able to give me some framing here. What is the framing of this movie? Like, it can't decide what it is. Is it like serious film? Is it like classic cinema where some things are a bit artificial? Is it comedy? Is it? It's going all over the place, this film.
My problem is the tonal shift between the first and the second scene. So there are comedic elements in the Hans Landa scene in the farmhouse. Because when he pulls out that ridiculous pipe, it is just really fucking funny. But also, but
it's also deliberately phallic, right? It's like, do you mind if I smoke my pipe in my house? So he's trying to long dick him there. And then he goes, may I also smoke my pipe? And it's fucking mad. It's huge. I have the big dick in this engagement.
But it's also
funny. I'll give him that.
It's really funny. And that also is a dig at Germanic culture with these stupid whatever pipes.
Yeah,
and,
also the over ornate.
I mean, that's some later Hosen giant beer glass shit. You know what I mean? That's some Bavarian redneck nonsense, which is very funny in this.
But it's you're right. It is funny, but like that is the tone. See, this might be the fundamental problem why you're off on end stage Tarantino, is because I don't know how many of these 70s like exploitation movies you've ever actually sat down to watch, but I can assure you that they veer from deadly serious, poignant scene where the protagonist is like, the protagonist will have his partner die in his arms, and then in the next scene, that same protagonist is slapping a secretary on the ass, going, "Hey, baby," they're all over the place. They're all over the place. They make that 1 minute they're trying to make you cry, the next minute they're just content to make you laugh. And
it's literally just going from that scene to Brad Pitt being like, "We killing Nazis,"
Nazi.
Have you heard of the bear Jew? Like, get me out.
Oblige him is straight fire, dude. I like
Oblige him is good.
It's
but anyway, that's
fire.
also my problem, Rich, because obviously this does connect similarly to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's a problem I have, though, which is, right, I think to do this properly, you have to have it work on both levels. It has to work for someone who's just watching the film clean, and imagine it was the first movie someone watched, and someone who knows all the history. Like, it can't all just be like, but if you'd have seen that one in 1974 with old Jingo Jackson in, you'd know what a great... And then it has to work on its own legs as well. It has to stand on its own legs.
It reverses the tone. The problem is the first scene is like, is this simmering like violence that's about to happen, right?
Yeah.
And the second with a little bit of humor, and the second scene is like 90% humor with some
a little bit of
malevolent airs.
Yes.
And it's just like, it just completely flips the tone of everything, and I just really don't like it. I don't know what to say.
What about the introduction of Fassbender in this?
He's also very good in this film.
Archie Hickox. That scene is hilarious.
Lieutenant Archie Hickox, reporting south. General Ed Fennick, at ease, Hickox. Drink.
If you offered me a scotch and plain water, I could drink a scotch and plain water.
That a boy, Lieutenant. Make it yourself like a good chap, will you? The bar's in the globe.
The Mike Myers just showing up is just objectively super funny.
Yes, yep, correct. But that
Which,
is,
by the way, let's be real, that's also Tarantino doing the classic. I'm going to make someone cool again who's not cool, because this is when Mike Myers has jumped the shark a million years before this. Everyone's out on him, but he's trying to bring him back as like a cool art.
They're also like bringing him back as the M to Fassbender's Bond, and so he is, basically being the boss of Austin Powers. So he's now being.
By the way, I actually
Powers
wish Fassbender was in
funny.
this more. I think he, sadly, again, another problem this movie has, by the way, is even the good parts have almost been reduced to the memes, haven't they? Like, obviously, he's that fucking meme that everyone's done 1 million times. And people who haven't even seen the film have seen that one, but he actually does kill his role mega in this one. He's really good.
Yeah, he's excellent. And mind if I go out speaking the Queen's, dear boy? Like, it's fucking that. What I love about his introduction into this movie is, and it really shows you like Tarantino's borrowing from everything. That's like a throwback to like The Great Escape or the classic like British movie
Zulu, all that shit. Yeah,
where the officer soldier class distinction.
Bridge on the River Kwai, like it's all that.
Because obviously you don't get that now because everyone's trying to like be post-critical.
Exactly.
No, back then you portrayed the heroism of these people. Yeah, that was.
But also as well that even there was a level of refinement to the British soldier in those movies, which probably is ahistorical. I'm going to say, because they were all working class. Like as my granddad served, and he was definitely not refined. So, but in those movies, it's like the way they still even in a prison camp, they still respect the chain of command and yes sir and all this stuff. So I love that that's in this movie, because
it's also hilariously shot, because it's shot so far away from all of the actors in this giant room where they're all just tiny on your screen. Like, it just looks super funny that they're all in this empty room just yelling across from each other.
But it's again, it's also like a visual comment on these people were detached from the war, you know, like, I mean, it's
they were also in these British manor houses and these giant like entrance rooms where they were talking to
all
each
these
other,
stately homes that were miles away from anywhere got turned into like headquarters, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's shot like that, which I think is really really funny,
you know. So I love that. I love his introduction. I also love again, it's almost like a reference to The Great Escape, where I think it's Donald Pleasance's character. I haven't seen that movie in years, but on the train where he speaks English to him and he goes, he goes, thank you, and he goes, you're welcome.
It's the famous giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, it can't be Donald Pleasance, because Donald Pleasance is the guy pretending to be blind. Pretending not to be blind, rather, doing that trick with the pin. But anyway, whatever. It's the one where he goes, basically, the German officer at the end says, thank you, as he gets off in English, and reflexively, because he's British, he goes, you're welcome, and they go, I got you. So, I mean, it's obviously a reference to that too. And I agree with you. I think the scene is brilliant. I think the introduction and the setup, and again, the two best scenes in this movie are the ones that they just build tension up absolutely ridiculously, to the point where you almost want it to come tumbling down, because the tension is excruciating. And obviously, it then erupts in violence, and the line, say goodbye to your Nazi balls. You know, it's fucking...
It would appear there's only one thing left for you to do.
And what would that be?
Stiglitz.
Say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
A man gets shot in the fucking...
you know, for me,
dick.
this movie really, the best parts are just the opening scene and then the scene in the bar with, you know, the Nazi enlisted men who are having the party, and because what Tarantino's so good at is just building tension in these scenes. And the fact that they're freaking out because it's in a basement, and then they have to go in there and everything's going wrong, and there are all these extra Nazis that are around, and then he's pretending to be a captain, but then a major comes in, so he's technically his commanding officer, and he can't do anything. Like, it really is just a masterclass in ratcheting up this tension throughout the scene, where you don't know what's going to happen. And the fact that this double agent German, you know, Hollywood, like German movie star, not Hollywood obviously, but movie star from the golden age of cinema, right, where they had all of these beautiful women that we think about from the 40s and 50s on the screen, and she's playing that German equivalent part, right, is really fascinating, and it's great. It's just a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say as well, I think that you might be doing the movie a slight disservice, because I think there are other great tension-building scenes in this. I think the reunion with Landa and Shosanna, where they have the strudel
at lunch,
and he's like, "Wait for the crumb."
By the way, almost all the scenes that Landa's in are fucking mega, aren't they? Like, that's another great one with tension.
Yeah,
also
then, you know, she thinks she's been recognized, even though it would be outlandish to think she could be. She was a child at the time, and he saw her running off
she was
into the
20.
distance,
It was only like a few years earlier.
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, even so, I mean, she's like 19, 20 years old, and he only saw her back as she sped off.
Yeah.
Like, there's almost zero chance.
I agree that it's outlandish, but it was only like,
you're
3 or 4 years difference. But yes.
You know, so it's like, obviously, that's a great tense scene. The scene as well where he realizes the female operative, played by Diane Kruger, is you know, is
Von
an agent.
Hammersmark, whatever her ridiculous
our character names in this might be off the table. Like,
and he'll also be doing it as like to be a bit silly with them and go over the top.
But, you know,
by the way, the one who plays the Shosanna or
really
whatever it wasn't it? Shosanna.
Shosanna, yeah.
That actress kills it too. She does a really good job.
Oh no, I was going to say, like,
she's a beautiful actress too.
Yes, I mean, like, she has that, like, the look is perfect. Like, she's got like very, you know, French kind of like features. It's very hard to explain, but I mean, she is beautiful. But also as well, she's got that, like, the eyes have that like steely look to them. that defiance. I mean, she's very good at just in a physical portrayal.
Because as much as I said the Brad Pitt cast that I don't like, or the Beardew one, some of the casting is really good. Like another one is the Daniel Bruhl guy, the one who plays the younger guy. He kills it. Also did his role. A bunch of people do a very good job in this film.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously like it's just a mixed bag because, like, again, Tarantino,
as you say as well, the Hugo Stiglitz guy is just perfect casting. Like, he looks aesthetically perfect. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, he's great. I mean, like, it's just obviously like it's end stage Tarantino, so he's gonna go to his guys and very rarely go outside of it, maybe for one or two parts, which. The good thing that comes out of this is obviously it launches Christopher Waltz's career.
Sure.
He did this and Django back to back, and then that was it. He was over the top. He was a Bond villain, criminally wasted as a Bond villain, by the way.
Yeah. Also,
considering how good an actor he is. But I mean, like, he's someone that obviously is now Hollywood mainstream, and it's off the back of this, and rightly so. I mean, his performance is killer. If you had to pick one thing from this movie to say it was a perfect 10 out of 10, completely unimpeachable in any way, shape, or form, it is Christoph Waltz's performance.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Is that the way you say it? That's a bingo.
You just say bingo.
Bingo! How fun!
I mean, and
it's one of the reasons, sadly, though, I think this movie is overrated. Because one, I think people just remember the gags, but they haven't rewatched the film, so they think they're probably funnier than they are. And then two, everyone just remembers his performance. Like I say, mate, this film is 2.5 hours long. Like, it's not just him; he's in like say a third of it or something. Like there's a lot of other shit goes on as well aside from it.
I hate to say it. This movie still zipped along for me. I don't think it feels 2.5 hours long. I was entertained throughout on a rewatch.
Listen,
even knowing
it's an entertaining film.
Coming.
I just don't think it's a great film. Is the problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, so this is where we get into like
the difference is, I said on Kill Bill, I actually genuinely found that dragged, and it did. Some of the scenes didn't hit that hard.
I never want to watch that again.
Difference is, I could still enjoy this film. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to watch Kill Bill again. I'll definitely watch Inglorious Bastards at some point. I mean, for a movie as well that like only a third of it is in English. I mean, like
true.
I think he does a really good job of blending all the elements. As I said, the things I don't like, some of the cast doesn't stick for me. I don't understand why Samuel L. Jackson is inserted as a voiceover at some point.
I know.
It's like, so weird.
Yeah, that is just bad. That's objectively bad. Because if you're going to have a narrator, well, first of all, very often the narrator is in some way linked to the film, right? But if they're not, like if it's not like, oh, let me tell you the story of what just happened, flashback, right? Or it can be like weapons. But the girl who isn't in the movie she's just telling the story of what happened, but she's introduced in the first scene. So when she pops up later, it all makes sense. You're 2/3 through the movie, Samuel Jackson's just a voiceover.
It's also just obviously Samuel L. Jackson too, which makes it even. He just has such a distinctive way of talking that you just know it's instantly him, and so it pulls you out of the movie, and you're thinking to yourself, why am I listening to Samuel L. Jackson right now?
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
It's very distracting.
I mean, again, I wouldn't have a problem if, like, I mean, this would totally ruin the movie, so I'm glad they didn't do this. But if the opening scene was, and then the Jew hunter went to the village, and it was Samuel L. Jackson saying that, like, at least then, as a framing device, it would make sense. But no, that sucks. That's really stupid. That was just a way to give a friend a couple of days' work. Like Harvey Keitel's in the movie. As a voice, he's one of the voices on the radio, I think. But like, so there's definitely stuff I would change structurally with the film. I think they probably take a bit too long to get to the end, the denouement, which I think is like hilariously over the top, but it is a direct reference to Fritz Lang. So what you're gonna do? The laughing through the flames. But I think ultimately. I think ultimately, like, I mean, also as well, another thing, it's got a connection to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's a thematic similarity. So not only are both those movies ahistorical in that they make something good happen where in our real timeline something awful happened, What they also talk about is the power of cinema and its ability to influence. And obviously, there's a storyline that's kind of running parallel to what the Inglorious Bastards are doing, which is all about film and propaganda films. And they have that sniper actor in there.
It also takes place in a cinema.
Yes,
it's about like projection and all this stuff. Yeah.
And obviously, that's like a reference to Riefenstahl, who did Triumph of the Will and other Nazi propaganda movies, which were very important in sort of altering the zeitgeist.
And also, I mean, Triumph of the Will is lauded purely as a masterpiece of filmmaking.
I mean, she was very talented. There's no getting
and
away
what they
from
just
that.
show on camera is spectacular. Back then, you could never have gotten that many extras to be.
I mean, it was a groundbreaking film. Now, we may not like what it depicts, but just from a directorial standpoint, it inspired many, many people and had a massive influence.
Well, I mean, look, the dirty secret is, if you remember our friend Frank Capra, he saw Triumph of the Will, and he directed a propaganda movie for the United States called Why We Fight. There's like a series of movies to encourage people to go and enlist against the Nazis in World War II. And it was basically, he watched Triumph of the Will and essentially cribbed it and turned it into an American.
Yeah, and also, this prominently features Goebbels. He's the Nazi leader who, out of all the Nazi leaders, he's the one who's most in the film, and he was the master of propaganda. Right, this was his job in order to make this stuff, and it was very effective. So, and film was still pretty new at this time period too, and especially new when it came to films with sound. Right, probably 10, 15 years old at this point in time.
I mean, like the Germans were way out in front, though. I've already referenced like Fritz Lang, but I mean, like all the German expressionist stuff that was coming out as well, and unfortunately, having a very early understanding of how cinema could be used to win hearts and minds. In the invention of modern propaganda. Oh, the Germans were way out in front on all of that stuff for sure. Perhaps not surprising. They were big theatric, people and opera and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, so ultimately, I don't even have a problem with the plot, as ridiculous as it is, and I don't have a problem with it being ahistorical. And I also think one of the things I do like as well about how well written it is, everybody gets to do something. You know what I mean? Everybody plays a part. They don't like just introduce a character and then don't give them a scene, or
That's true.
They all get to do something. Like the Fassbender introduction sort of comes out of left field, arguably gets the best scene in the movie after the opening, and then dies. And you're like, oh, I mean, I was genuinely sad I wasn't going to see more of Fassbender. But I also think that's another the power of Tarantino. I don't want to use the phrase subverting your expectations, but what I love about him is he is able to co-opt A-list actors to come and get shot in one scene.
No, you mean like put it this way. You would even think when you saw that scene, like, oh, you're just going to throw the character away like that. Like after building it up like that, you'd think he's going to do something epic, wouldn't you? He's just out the movie already. True.
Yeah, that's like a hallmark of Tarantino's like later stuff. There's, I mean, like, think about The Hateful Eight. I mean, bodies are just dropping left, right, and center in that one. You have that like just a throwaway Bruce Lee scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The whole Manson family thing is like in it for like, when he goes up to the ranch and he meets it's Bruce Dern, I think, and everything's okay. And again, that's just another masterclass of like tension building, and nothing actually happens apart from a fight over a flat tire. It's like I don't know. Like for me, I think your problem might be expectations. Now, when I sit down to watch Tarantino film, I don't necessarily expect a great movie, although I do believe Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that. And is a triumphant return to form. I expect to be entertained, and I expect there to be loads of like just really funny, ultra violent, comedy scenes. Also like sly winks. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm doing. I've seen that movie too. That's what I sit down to watch Tarantino movies.
Doesn't part you wonder though where the magic of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs is though?
But I think the magic is here. I still think it's in this film. No, I do. It's just
here's my issue is that it starts to ask these questions and starts to talk about these themes that we're discussing, but then it never finishes the thought because it gets too involved with just this moment of catharsis. Like for me, the peak of this movie, the climax in the movie theater when everything's burning down, the dialogue that Shosanna gets is very bad when it comes to the thing that she chooses to record for the Nazis.
Sure.
Basically just saying
great.
like, haha, you're going to die now. And then you get into it. And not only are they shooting Hitler, the two guys that are left from the Bastards, but then we get this insanely gratuitous shot of machine gunning Hitler's body on the floor.
Hilarious.
And to me, I'm just, yeah, but that's not the point. Like, I guess if you're going for that, but it brings down the depth of these themes so much because it's so gratuitous and it makes it very puerile in a way. And I think that this could have been a much more profound moment if Shosanna had taped herself saying something more worthwhile. If her relationship with this man who was working at the movie theater with her was deeper, because that's just kind of thrown away. Even the Zoller climax where he comes in and they both shoot each other, it feels like a letdown. It doesn't quite get there, I think, is the biggest problem.
Yeah,
for
but
me.
so to the point about is the magic there, the opening scene is as good as any scene in Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
Bar,
agreed.
The bar scene is maybe as good as anything in Pulp Fiction. Again, if we're talking about building tension, I think if I was to have an analog, it would be the scene with the syringe. Maybe when she overdoses, that's arguably
but here's the problem. Like, Pulp Fiction is perfect in the way that it has all of this style, but Pulp Fiction doesn't approach deeper themes. And I guess my disappointment is at this point in Tarantino's career, we've talked about it. We have this fantastic meta commentary on the power of cinema. We have an interesting interpretation of history. We have an insanely interesting character in Hans Landa that is played in an out of this world performance by Christoph Waltz. And yet we can't actually get to a deep theme that resonates. It's thrown away in favor of Jewish murder fan service. Yeah. And that's why I don't like it.
I kind of feel, though, it's like what is Tarantino going to say that couldn't be said, hasn't been said in other more serious war movies? However, there is only one director that's going to make a pulpy homage to 70s revenge movies with a Jewish tint. Like, this is a very Tarantino film. We can all agree upon that. His fingerprints are... Like, if I was to play this to you and say, go on, guess the director, you would know instantly, right? There's zero chance you would confuse this work for anybody else. So in that sense, I think Tarantino, like, whatever you say about him, he makes the movies he wants to make. And this isn't a movie that has the problems that Django Unchained has.
But even the what ifs don't happen, because the entire premise of this is the war ends early, but we never see how the world changed because the war ended early.
Yeah, it's not about that. Like, we're going to send Landa into the world with a swastika on it. No, that isn't a problem. It doesn't have to be about those things. Like, you don't have to show a whole divergent timeline where Hitler died early and make the movie about that, right?
But I'm just saying that it's just a low punchline. And I think that this could have been something much more profound than it ended up.
I mean, put it this. Sorry,
I'll do a mini rant. It's only a mini one though. There's two parts to this. One, I just don't have much to tell you. Like, one is basically the difference. I think is this. It's like in his later films, Tarantino is painfully self-aware of what a Tarantino film is.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, there's none of that. He's just a guy making films, and then you realize these are fucking mega films. Who made them? Oh, it's this guy. Wow, great script director. And then the tropes become like known but observed externally. The gags in this movie are baked in. Like, some of the gags in Pulp Fiction are almost like, it's not really on the screen a gag. You're just supposed to laugh at how ridiculous and absurd the scenario is or how the lines delivered or something. In this one, they're almost like turn to the camera, boom, boom, ha ha. What great gag, isn't it? Like that's a bit over the
Exactly.
top. And then secondly, even though I do think some of the scenes are like I said, this does have moments where it's punctuated, where it's really good. Some of the movie also, that is Tarantino doing the thing I was describing earlier, being like, well, if you saw this movie in the 72, of course, and then the one that came out in 73 could have been, and he's doing that thing where it's like, that's not what those first films were. The first films, like I say, you could watch any of those first couple of movies and never know any reference. And you wouldn't, in fact, the joke is you would make the mistake like everyone does with people who copy. You think he invented it, wouldn't you? You think he made all those scenes up and none of it was a reference. So that's the weird part. It's like, I actually feel like that's in a weird sense, even though I hate any great director ever retiring. The reason why I don't hate the idea Tarantino himself says he's going to retire is because I do feel like he's gotten trapped in like a bit of like cult of personality type thing.
Sure,
you know?
I can agree with that. I think that I don't think there's any harm in conceding that point ultimately.
Which, by the way, isn't unique to him. Like I'll tell you right now, if you ask one of my favorite, I'll tell you one of my favorite songwriters ever, Noel Gallagher of Oasis. Totally admits the reason why I've never been able to make an album like those first few albums is I can't be that guy anymore. I was just a guy for council estate who made a bunch of music. It got massive. Now I'd be aware like who I am, and I'd be sitting down trying to write that out. And yeah, that is in fact, it's actually one of the reasons, by the way, if you've ever noticed, why when you yearn for like a reuniting of a band, it'll never actually be that good. Like if they get back together and make an album, it's going to be 20 years later, man. They won't be the same people. It won't be the third album you want after that. It'll be something where they unfortunately are aware also. Like we're going to go back and do this thing like you were doing before. And I feel like in his movies at a certain point, that's why actually the bizarre thing is, I don't think he was trying to do that in Kill Bill, but when he gets to this film, I think a lot of his films have that element baked into them, unfortunately.
I mean, for me, like I think like basically Kill Bill, my criticism of that was ultimately there was no one there to put Tarantino back on the tracks, and that was like he'd watched a bunch of fucking kung fu and anime movies and was like, I want to make a kung fu anime movie, and it was honestly like that. I can't.
That part was fine. It was the second part that was less.
Well, I mean, yeah, but also as well, the sheer hubris to not just edit it down into one movie in the first place and to have a studio say, we don't care. Tarantino, the brand, is a license to print money. So we will allow you to make two films. One has all of the best action scenes. One, just expository dialogue and totally unbelievable romantic relationship between an elderly man and a beautiful woman, you know, like, and we're just gonna, and very unsatisfying. And so that should have all been stopped, but he was just at the peak of his powers. Fortunately, what happens is Grindhouse happens, and I was lucky enough to see Grindhouse. I sought out the cinema to see it as it was intended. Both the movies, him and Robert Rodriguez, back to back with a fucking, you know, proper break in the middle. And then after that, I think he just realized, like, I love those types of films, and that's what I want to make. And Duncan's on the right. Yeah, Tarantino definitely is making Tarantino movies these days. He's not Tarantino making a film. He is Quentin Tarantino, the brand, making a Quentin Tarantino movie for Quentin Tarantino fans. And that comes with certain expectations and certain downsides, sure. But this movie, like, I think it still produces magical moments. I mean, critics loved this film. It was on everyone's top 10 list. It was number one on a lot of top 10 lists for the year it was released. Roger Ebert, as we'll get to at the end, loved this film. 4 stars from Big Roger. This would be one of the last Tarantino movies I think he would have been able to review, because I think he was deathly ill at this point in his career in 2009. But everybody loved this movie. Everybody loved this movie. Like, and I think to look back at it now and go, it's a bit silly here, and you know they don't reach into deeper themes. Tarantino is capable of reaching those deeper themes. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a very deep, reflective, contemplative film, and says a lot of very profound things about cinema and celebrity and everything else. And it's great. It is a love letter to cinema. I don't think there's been a better one written, frankly, except maybe One Cut of the Dead, but people aren't ready to have that conversation. So, like, I just don't know what you guys would expect from a film like this. Like, Tarantino makes a war movie with no war in it. Great. I would sign up. I would sign up for that every single day of the week. If you just read me the elevator pitch, I would be there tomorrow. And I think this movie holds up tremendously. I like to say, if we were talking about Django Unchained here, I've got some ground to concede because that has two endings. That has some really ropey performances. That has Tarantino giving himself significant lines of dialogue in totally needless things. Oh, there's things to talk about. There's an obsession with gelding people. Like,
By the way, another thing about this movie, though, is I also do think at the end, it almost has the thing I hate about the classic ending of The fucking Departed, where like everyone just dies. Like, even when she shot that guy, she's been fake romance, and then he's just waiting the whole time to do one last shot, and come on, everyone just dies at the end. It's like the problem with that is, I agree with you, Richard. It's if in a movie partway through you kill off a key character when I don't expect it, that can be powerful. This is almost like again a gag ending of like lol, and then everyone just shoots each other and dies.
That scene reminds me so much. If you guys remember the famous scene that's the end of the OC, the television show, I haven't seen the show.
What you say?
Yeah. So SNL did a sketch of this called Dear Sister, where all of them just shoot each other with that song, the Imogen Heap song playing. And I just could not stop laughing and thinking about that during the scene. I mean, I expected the music to come on.
Put it this way: End of The Departed, Duncan is also, because he does love that movie, he's also left out the criminal rat scurrying across the fucking windowsill with the government police buildings in the background. It's a guilty pleasure for me. I've seen it way too many. I mean, put it this way: The Infernal Affairs is the superior film.
Yeah, it's just an unnecessary film to exist.
Exactly. But I mean, look, if you say Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, and Ray Winston all overacting, like with Matt Damon just plugged into the middle doing whatever he does,
I will say I was very grateful that unlike most modern Scorsese movies, it actually ended. Because I thought, oh God, at the end of it, I was like, this is just the first ending. There's going to be a second ending, just like in all the other Scorsese movies. But it just ends, and I was like, thank God this movie is over.
So egregious, though, Brett. Like, again, here's the problem, though, Monty. I'll at least give credit to Tarantino. He knows when he's playing a gag. That's not even supposed to be a gag in that movie. That's just the serious ending of the film.
No.
It just comes off like an SNL skit, doesn't it? Like it's absurd.
The problem that movie has is ultimately Scorsese fucking let Jack Nicholson just go fucking nuts, which maybe that's what you have to do. But like, just that scene where he's just got a severed hand, it's just randomly in it, like just everything he does is just bonkers. Like it's a crazy thing. But anyway, see, this movie at least has some restraint. And it does.
Richard thinks the movie where a French woman laughing through the smoke as all the Nazi leadership dies and their machine gun from above.
Machine gun like the end of fucking Scarface.
If you're following the NBA and NHL, you'll know the playoff push is heating up, which is very exciting. And there's no better way to cash in on the high-flying action than with Prize Picks, our sponsor. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks, so don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. It's really easy to play Prize Picks, guys. All you do is pick more or less on anywhere between 2 and 6 player stat projections. They also cover esports, as I'm sure you guys know. They have Counter-Strike, League of Legends, and other esport on there. So if you have a player you like, all you have to do in Counter-Strike or League or pick stats like if they get more or less kills on a given map. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in. So not only do you have basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, etc. You also, of course, many of you are coming from esports here on 4Play, and you can play along there as well. There's also a new feature. They have early payouts. So if your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. You can join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 sports pick app. Not only that, but it's available in all 50 states in the U.S., including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. So if you're in America, you can play wherever you are. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code 4PLAY. That's FOURPLAY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code 4PLAY. And thanks a lot to Prize Picks for sponsoring our show.
I also agree with Monty. Here's what's bizarre.
Truly,
like,
Inglorious
remember,
Bastards
this
showed
isn't
restraint.
Remember,
Compared to
this
The Departed.
This isn't a documentary. She's acting in the rest of the film. Why is she so much worse in her own inside the movie film thing to say to the Nazis, "I'm going to kill you"? That acting's trash. She's really good in the rest of the film.
Yeah, I think maybe
it's really weird.
I think it was probably a deliberate choice because obviously, you know, the artificiality of cinema. How do you reflect the artificiality?
You're going
of
to,
cinema?
you're like, right, you took the film media studies student equivalent of PEDs for this episode. Because you're on some like pure fucking, you've been spinning fucking a 70s blaxploitation movie, EPO style, to inject into your veins. Because you're doing that thing where it's like, now what's genius is Tarantino wanted you to think that scene sucked because that references how people never understood 70s classics.
No.
And they would years later.
That's what I was going to say.
That's
what I was going to say. What I'm saying is, right, okay, how can I represent how cinema feels in cinema?
Okay.
How can I present the artificiality? Well, I direct a really deliberately stilted artificial scene and insert it into the cinema.
But they literally just already did that with the stilted German movie that they had created, which was obviously ridiculous and hilarious.
So what you're saying is it is a stylistic choice. Agreed.
I did appreciate about
By the way,
that
that's
movie.
a good gag. I like the gag where all the GIs are getting shot. And then
And by the way,
that's funny. I like
what's
that.
so funny
I
is that they keep going back to the cinema, and it must have been like 30 minutes of Zoller just like shooting guys out of that tower, which is very funny.
And then the scene where Hitler like turns to the guy like,
happening, and they're
"This
just
is
like
excellent" or whatever, and the guy's like crying because Hitler's like acknowledged it, like Senpai has noticed it. That scene's funny too. I like that.
That is funny.
So I think probably look. I'm not saying Tarantino is infallible, right? But I think a lot of things people see as being bad, they might be bad, but they're still his choice, right? It's still what he chose as a filmmaker, you know? Whereas some filmmakers are incompetent and they're just bad. Or an actor, you know, the director can't coax a performance from an actor and it's bad. Tarantino can do all of those things. So I always give him the benefit of the doubt. If I see something on screen, there's no doubt in my mind Tarantino meant to put it there. That's one thing I'll say about him. It's the same with Scorsese. You know, it's like he's a deliberate director. He's made enough good movies that if something is in the film, it's not there by mistake.
Sure.
That's how I feel about it. Whereas you can't say that about every director.
Oh, I've got a question for you. I found a way to synthesize the positions that we're articulating here. Here's one of the things I don't appreciate about Tarantino in that sense, is he actually did, I think, get lost in the sauce of I'm Tarantino. So that now gives me carte blanche to do anything. Here's the difference. I actually think you could argue in light of the examples we're giving that because his first films are Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and also, by the way, he's working with like standard Hollywood actors, etc., and he hasn't got the same reputation and license. If anything, he's mildly more reserved there. Maybe then he would have gone crazy. But the problem later becomes, and I think this is actually a problem a lot of musicians face, is I think he just was allowed to become, by definition, incredibly self-indulgent, and he could just do anything he wanted on camera. And as we're almost describing here, whether you like it or don't, if you've enjoyed his other movies, you're going to watch it. Like, that's a very unique position of being in cinema. There's a lot of even great directors. By the way, even the likes of the Scorseses, some of those guys actually in their careers have had times where it didn't matter that decades early they did classics. It was hard to get the funding or to get the script or to get the movie made. Tarantino at this point is in like the sweet spot where it feels like he could have put literally anything on film and people would watch it and try and find a way it's brilliant. So it's not that makes the movie bad, but I think that essentially doesn't have any guardrails on these movies for me. So sometimes he is just veering off a cliff. He's going way too deep, or a scene lasts 20 minutes when it should have been 5, you know.
Clearly, we're also holding him to a different standard. I mean, this is not a bad movie. Like, you know, it's just
but he also did that to himself too, Monty. If Tarantino had never appeared himself on screen or in an interview and you only had his work, you'd have a very different perspective on the mystery. The problem is he's also sold himself so hard as I am the visionary director, the genius. Sure. And so I agree. Unfortunately, that means we do hold his films to a higher standard. And also, let's be real, Monty, a reason you have to is his fans hold them to an insanely high standard. Like, I'm sorry, they're Richard isn't one of them, but there absolutely are Tarantino fans who would look you dead in the eyebrow and they would pass the lie detector test that every movie he made is like a 10 and he's just a fucking unbelievable and you just don't get it.
I can't go
There are
that
those
far.
people, the Radiohead and Tool fans of the world.
I also am a Radiohead
By the way,
and Tool fan.
Yeah, but here's the difference, Richard. I like both those bands, but I despise the fans. That's the problem.
No, I get that.
You can do both.
I mean, look, because we're coming to the end of the episode, I guess I kind of wrapping up the Tarantino mythos, if you will.
And he didn't have a theme where it went bastards. If he'd done that, that'd have helped tide the movie.
No, that
foreshadowing for the
that is foreshadowing.
They did have the Bowie music, which Richard wears his Bowie shirt today. I noticed for the very obvious David Bowie song.
Hey, it's like I wore that Black Sabbath album for the Mandy episode. I love to get like Tarantino. I love to sprinkle Easter eggs into the episodes of Foreplay. So, but no, like on the mythos around Tarantino.
Just a shame he didn't have the genius cinematic idea to use a very underrated song no one's ever heard of called "Heroes" by David Bowie. That would have made the film. Anyone who does that ever, that's one of our bingo cards. If you are a hack, if you ever do that, it's been done to death. You twats, but people still keep doing it, man. Keep doing it. It's the equivalent of making a Counter-Strike frag movie.
But you see, if Tarantino had done it, it would have been a clever reference to those other hack movies.
There you go, Monty. Exactly.
Here's the thing, Richard. True, though. Actually,
here's the thing. Is this a mean comment if I say, am I being too sort of uncharitable if I say the following comment? My problem with how you're describing the film is you're making it sound like the Tarantino director's commentary version of this movie is incredible. It's probably fucking straight fire if he's telling you all the films he watched. And all that sounds mega. Yeah, that sounds like it would be like an artifact of cinema. But when I'm watching the film, I don't have that. Unless I know the things or I've read an article. I'm just coming in with whatever I've got, haven't I?
Yeah. Well, so look, I think does the movie succeed on its own merits? Yeah, of course it does. There's no way all the critics are wrong, right?
No.
There's I mean, like, this movie has a lot of merit, and certainly in 2009 when it's released, it was one of the better movies in show that year.
It is also simultaneously true that this movie is worse on rewatches.
But I mean, but again, like, is it?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Because I think a lot of the value is in this. So first off, I think it's the time. I think this is pre us realizing that he's subverting and changing history. So like you said, when this came out, it was much more unique and exciting because it was something we hadn't seen before instead of something we've seen now from Tarantino several times.
And like I said, if you don't know he's going to change the ending with the thing, that is really like a mega memorable scene as a result. That was really shocking in the moment. Yeah.
I mean, look, 2009, as I said, it was like not a great year for film. Like, that's the year Avatar comes out. That's the year Precious was doing the rounds. If anyone's, we should definitely do a fucking watch of that.
By the way, that is an absolutely pre-walk fucking artifact of history that could never be made now. They would never make that movie that way. Again. The way the moments in that, like, it's outrageous, isn't it?
Werner Herzog did his remake of Bad Lieutenant in 2009 with Nicolas Cage. So it was a strange time in film, and lots happening. But ultimately, I think, like, I don't think this is worse on a rewatch. I think
The Hurt Locker won Best Picture.
Yeah. Right?
We've already done the rant about fucking her on the
blah blah blah
episode,
American imperialist propaganda, blah blah blah. But no, it's like I don't think it's worse. I don't think it's worse on a rewatch. Like, I mean, it's worse on a rewatch, like any film is, in the sense it can no longer surprise you.
All right, since I know you did, and we're not doing it in this arc, so let's just do it now, right? Since we know you were never going to, at this point, review Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it will have to be a future arc, right? You made an outrageous statement on that one where it's like one of your best films of all time or something, didn't you? Didn't you have, like, there's one of the best films ever or something?
I mean, it's like I say, it's easily up there with Pulp Fiction. It's easily...
Does this movie get in a similar category?
No. Like, so if I was doing the ranking, let's imagine we've got the tier list out in front of us. What's in S tier? Well, it's Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
By the way, that should probably even be an idea for a potential premium service. Might you do a quick episode of Ted Taylor, and we do like 20-minute argument or something?
Yeah. And does anything else Tarantino made get into S? It certainly wouldn't be Django Unchained. It certainly wouldn't be Death Proof. It's So are the rest of his films A? This is where this sits for me. This is an upper A tier Tarantino movie. Kill Bill is a D tier, right? So
okay,
just to give you-
okay, right, we've got the range then. We've got the range.
I think it is that bad. I actually think that movie, especially if you wear the movie both parts as one,
That's the problem.
That's
why
really
I
bad.
said, even though it sounds
really
mental,
bad.
because I kept thinking about this after the episode. I essentially said Kill Bill's a 5 out of 10 movie, but
Yep.
it's because if it has to be 4.5 hours, it is 5 out of 10. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Like when it was separate, it wasn't as bad. I thought it would be more like a 6 or a 7 or something. And then also, that's an example of a movie. That's why I actually think low key, it's like Sleeper, one of his worst movies.
Yep.
Because when I remembered it and hadn't watched it in years, I thought it was better than it was. I remembered some good scenes. I thought, oh, it's kind of fun, you know. When I rewatched it, a lot of that didn't age that well and didn't hang together that well. I was kind of low key shocked actually how overrated that film is.
The only
It's not
other
even like it was that beloved at the time.
The only other movie that has a chance of getting into S is Jackie Brown. And that's a big sticking point for a lot of people. But that movie was critically not.
Yeah, but here's the thing,
given its
Richard.
flowers at the time.
Notice in all these episodes, I've never flamed Jackie Brown.
No.
Because
I know.
actually, for me, Jackie Brown is also the transition film for when he starts to become a bit more like that's one of the last movies where he is just a guy making films. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to know Tarantino to watch or enjoy that movie.
He made Jackie Brown essentially to piss off Spike Lee. Spike Lee said Tarantino was obsessed with the N-word and had no right to use
By the way,
it.
that's fire if so, because actually the joke is, Spike Lee, that's why you are an overrated movie maker. This white boy literally did make a movie like you'd make, but it's better than yours, mate.
Yeah.
And not least because he doesn't make it so overtly, like old Spike Brown movies. Like, fuck Whitey, it just is, just is like one note gag of his movies, unfortunately.
So yeah, a lot of people thought Jackie Brown was like, it was Tarantino. So that's already the start of the cult of personality. Right. Like, if you pitched to Miramax, hey, I'm a white director with 2 hit films under my belt. I know we all want to cash in on the success of Pulp Fiction. Can I make a blaxploitation movie with Samuel L. Jackson and Pam Grier, please? And what are you doing? But he did it, and it was really, really good. So I mean, maybe that gets into S tier. It's certainly the highest of the A is.
Sure.
And then obviously, like Django Unchained is B, and Hateful Eight is A for me. Death Proof is B because it's deliberately bad.
Yeah, and it's also not super long. It's just great. It's tightly done movie. It's just a fun film. And
so,
I
mean, so I'm not saying he's never made a bad movie now. I said that going into the arc. I will objectively concede. I think Kill Bill, if you combine parts 1, part 2, it is self-indulgent, overindulgent, edited terribly, terrible pacing.
He actually fucked himself by admitting it should have been one film. He should have stuck with the story that it was always supposed to be 2 and that he did this for some clever reason. I think I would have helped the movie.
And because I like to torture myself while I was working out in Romania, I had nothing to do. So I watched the whole bloody affair, and it is superior. Like, I mean, they do cut out a bunch of stuff you don't miss. But it's still bad. Like, it's still, I might put it C, just because it gets rid of a lot of the parts of part 2. But I mean, like, so has he made a bad movie? I guess kind of, yes. I'll concede it now. Are the majority of his movies good? A to S tier, yes. His output is phenomenal. He's still one of the best directors of all time.
You've reminded me of another problem I have with Tarantino.
Yeah.
I would be a lot more forgiving of films like these in its flaws if the whole point was he was one of those guys who makes a movie every year or 2, and the idea is he's done like 50 movies, and so some of them were like in this weird historical thing, some were comedies, some were the problem is because I'm only going to get in theory 10 movies ever from this guy apparently. Like, this is what you choose as one of your bullets. If you only got 10 shots, this is one that you take, is it? That seems like, I would have gone more serious.
He started writing this at the same time as Kill Bill, and the original idea was to have Shosanna as essentially what the bride in Kill Bill is. And it was going to be a revenge movie where she hunted down each of the Nazis, sort of ending with Landa. And that was, and that was how it was going to play out.
And bizarrely, she also was wearing that Bruce Lee yellow tracksuit.
No doubt. and was barefoot for most of the film. Of course.
Actually, that's one thing. Fair play. You know what? We're wrong, Monty. There is restraint. He didn't make that straight fire lead actress or Diane Kruger constantly show their feet in this movie.
Yeah, true.
That is a level
literally a scene that focuses on Diane Kruger's foot.
Right, forget the Diane. He didn't do the other one, though. He did do Diane Kruger. You're right, actually. That's true.
I mean, put it this way. You know it's bad when there's a segment in your Wikipedia
But you know
page.
what? You know this main actor's the Shosanna one. You know he was just going off camera like, No, but I shouldn't. I've already done Diane Kruger.
I've got it in front of me.
Go,
it says a recurring image in his films are scenes where women's bare feet feature prominently. When asked about foot fetishism, Tarantino responded, "I don't take it seriously. There's a lot of feet in a lot of good directors' movies. That's just good direction."
Pull the other one, mate. It's got bells on it. You absolute fuck. Give me a.
No, but
by the way, the reason that's so whack is in every other every area, what we appreciate about him is his authenticity.
Yeah.
Like he will lean into, like, of course I say the N-word in the movies. Here's my reason why. Of course I show like these violence and things that you were. The idea on that one, he just pulls back like, bro, we all get it. Like, you're not fooling anyone. We're not fooling anyone with this.
I mean, it's just the choices he
You're
makes.
not doing a fucking, Senate committee on fucking, that sort of. We're not
Diane Kruger,
Oppenheimer. You don't have to pretend it's not true.
She could have left a glove behind, you know what I mean?
know.
And yet she leaves the shoe, and then they do the entire Cinderella moment of him putting the shoe on her and the close-up of the foot. I'm like, oh my
I mean,
God.
I'm just say as well, like a lot of people we've lauded on this show, it's not just the movies he directs. Remember, he wrote True Romance. He wrote Natural Born Killers.
I always think it's a shame he, essentially, disavowed them. I always thought he never should have done that either. That makes his, that makes the Tarantino verse way more interesting.
Yeah,
man.
he wrote Dusk Till Dawn. He rewrote The Rock.
Yep. By the way, as a random detail, since people keep referencing it in reference to Sinners, Tarantino did not direct from Dusk Till Dawn. I notice a lot of people on social media have some like Mandela effect where they think that's his film. It's like, no, he's in it and he wrote part of it. Like, no, that's always, isn't it bizarre how many people think that's just one of his films?
Yeah, I know. It's because obviously, like, when that was put out, because it was Robert Rodriguez, it was also on Miramax. He was the other like enfant terrible that they were like pushing, because he, by the way, they essentially funded him to remake El Mariachi, which is, by the way, I love Robert Rodriguez as well. He's like,
listen, Desperado has another very distinct place in my heart, because one, it is just a good movie, and then two, Selma Hayek.
Straight fire.
10 out of 10.
90
Unbelievable.
Selma Hayek.
Absolutely.
But I mean, like, and like people have forgotten about what an edgy director he is, because obviously people know him for fucking Spy Kids.
Yep.
But like what he did, 2005 Sin City is a fucking masterpiece.
When everyone says that, they only made good comic book movies with The Dark Knight, mate, that still holds up.
Yeah.
By the way, Sin City, the first one, is unbelievable still.
Yes.
Still
It was also just amazing when it came out, because visually it was so different to anything anybody had ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the best cast movies ever in the history of Hollywood. That casting is unreal in that movie.
Yeah.
It's mega.
No,
and also,
no one else could have been
that
Marv.
kind of names
Mickey
they
Rourke.
got are bonkers. Yeah, it's nuts.
So I mean, like, I love him, but obviously when it was Tarantino that was popping off by the time Dusk Till Dawn came out, so because that was like 96. So how do you market it? Well, you slap Tarantino on the cover. By the way, one of the ugliest men to ever be on a movie poster.
Oh yes, he's an absolute gremlin.
Yeah, like, for sure. He is next to George Clooney on the Dusk Till Dawn poster. It's like quite jarring. They've even tried to give him like. They've tried to make Tarantino good looking somehow. It's like, I don't even know how that's better than
Imagine
any CGI in the film. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, like a lot of people do think it's his movie because they slapped his name all over it to get you to go and watch the fucking movie because Tarantino's so hot right now. So that
oh, by the way, that even reminds me, there's another thing you actually, as a joke, but also seriously can't actually ignore about Tarantino's influence on cinema. Richard will know this. In the 90s, there are so many movies we watched because they actually had the gall. They would obviously be foreign language films. They just put Tarantino Presents. We had nothing to do with it. It was just a film he'd seen and thought was cool. But they would do that almost like in the way that they'd trick you in the modern day with being like Christopher Nolan produced. The word produce is doing so much heavy lifting there. It's not a Christopher Nolan movie, you probably saw. But it's to make your brain go, hey, I love Christopher Nolan. Let me watch this movie. So there was a lot of movies back then as well that happened with.
One of the ones I distinctly remember being marketed in that fashion was Killing Zoe.
Yes.
With Eric Stoltz.
For obvious reasons. It was also because it was Roger Avery too, Yeah,
and Julie Delpy and what have you. So basically that was like marketed like from the
Which, by the way, shows
brilliant minds.
This is why I don't blame him for becoming self-indulgent, because unfortunately that is what his fans want.
Yeah.
Like, he is actually, funny enough, it's very similar, the fan base. Like I said, to people like Tool, Radiohead, fucking Morrissey, whatever. The problem is a lot of people going to see those people just revere everything they've done, and they're just like, give me more of the same. That's what they're asking every time. They're not asking like, make me something brilliant and new and go in a different direction. They just want, like, essentially the joke would be on some like Henry Ford shit. If you ask the Tarantino fan, they would actually unironically say, make Pulp Fiction 2.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say make another movie. They'd go make Reservoir Dogs 2,
Well,
Pulp Fiction 2, and Kill Bill 3 or whatever. That's what they'd ask for.
And on that note, I guess as we wrap it up, I'll do the Roger Ebert bit in just a second. But they are going to get what they want, because he has written a sequel to what, like this is where I get very nervous.
This sounds so wild, doesn't it?
He has written a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which focuses on Brad Pitt's stuntman character, Cliff Booth, and he is producing it, but he's not going to direct it, so it doesn't count as one of his 10 films.
I know. Because now you just find a ways to keep making movies, but without breaking the 10 movies. Yeah. You've already lied and combined 2 into 1 and gave me a break. So, at the end, he's going to be finding some other way. Like, that wasn't actually a movie. It was a 30-minute vignette or something. What's he going to be doing when he's 58 or something? I don't know.
So he's hired David Fincher to direct it.
Okay.
Now, David Fincher is coming off the back of a couple of pretty ropey Netflix movies, in my opinion.
Sure.
I don't know.
When you consider this guy was revered once upon a time.
Like,
absolutely.
The Killer was okay.
It's just all right. Yeah.
And Mank was like Oscar bait with Gary Oldman.
But it's weird. They're worse movies when you know that they are made by David Fincher, though. If you thought you wouldn't hate The Killer otherwise, but when you go like, wait a minute, that's one of your bullets you're firing. It's that movie, David Fincher. What are you doing, mate? I thought you were the author who was super specific.
Like we said in the Frankenstein episode, where, Netflix is where creativity goes to die. Netflix is going to put this sequel out to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I have like David Fincher, Netflix, produced by Tarantino, written by Tarantino. I got some fears that he's going to undo a lot of the good work he did, because I don't need a sequel to that movie. It's perfect. It's a perfect film. It's a 10 out of 10 perfect movie. Don't need a sequel to it. So yeah, people would want Pulp Fiction too. And don't, if this is the future of Tarantino, don't write off him having a script somewhere in a cupboard that tumbles out one day when he's in his 60s for a lark and he gets a top director to direct it just because. Like, don't ever rule any of that out. Like, this whole 10 movies thing is so
mate, I can already tell you, since you said it, that is what will happen. He'll say he won't make any more than 10. So he'll make 10. But as you say, in like 15 years, he'll just be like, oh, but now Ryan Coogler's going to make this script I had for Django 2. And then it'll just be some shit like that. Because then it'll be like, and also, let's be real, this is one thing I'll never put a hold against an artist. There might also just be a time when he just needs some money at some point in time and he goes, oh, well, just like a lot of great artists did, time to get back on tour again and do the old hits. Yeah, there might be a time when he does that too and sells out a little bit.
Yep. So here we go. Roger Ebert, 4 stars, because of course
4 stars.
4 stars on his patented
this guy's
scale
so
of 4.
All over the place. He's just so all over the place, isn't he?
Let me see.
That's one thing I can't understand about Roger Ebert is this. Even though there are themes, there is just like a lack of coherence to the actual like number he gives the movies. Don't you know what I mean? And that's the part that's so jarring. The amount of the ones where it's like, but how could you think that's a 4 and this is a 1? And then it'd be like it's the same sort of movie. He's a mystery to me. This guy still, he's an enigma.
So here he goes. A Tarantino film resists categorization. You're right, Roger. You've been right the whole time. Inglorious Bastards is no more about war than Pulp Fiction is about, well, what the hell is it about? Of course, nothing in the movie is possible except that it's so bloody entertaining. His actors don't chew the scenery, they lick it. Whatever that means. He's a master at bringing performances as far as they can go towards iconographic exaggeration. See, Roger Ebert gets it. After I saw Inglourious Basterds at Cannes, although I was writing a daily blog, I resisted giving an immediate opinion about it. I knew Tarantino had made a considerable film, but I wanted it to settle and to see it again. And I'm glad I did. Like a lot of real movies, you relish it more the next time. Immediately after Pulp Fiction played at Cannes, Tarantino asked me what I thought. I said it's either the best film of the year or the worst film, I said. I hardly knew what...
This guy is just a walking cliche, and he's mental. I can't believe the problem is. Look, to be fair, this is him writing and recounting of what he said. But if that was real, you are just whack.
He probably did. He probably did. He probably did say. I hardly knew what the hell had happened to me. The answer was the best film. Tarantino films have a way on growing on you. It's never enough to see them once. And he's right. And this is a movie that I think is just a lovely film that you could jump into. You know what? I do want to see that fucking funny scene again. I do want to watch Hans Landa again. I do want to see Aldo the Apache again. Not so much the bear Jew, he's tiny, but you know, the Donnie Donowitz. But like, it's just nice to dip in and out.
Oh, by the way,
of this
you've
film.
just reminded me of something as well.
Yeah,
Another thing as well, people will forget is because this was after like Death Proof and stuff, and it was in that period where it'd been a bunch of years since Kill Bill, so no one really knew where he was at. This was also like a mini comeback. Because if you remember, I just Googled it and it's true. Right, Monty, this will actually trigger you, bro. This movie received an 11-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. Yep. Now, remember, Monty, I didn't just say they enjoyed it. Bro, 11 minutes is like what you would do at the end of like Heat or something. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God. Yeah. Why are they making this? Like, this isn't like fucking Tarantino's 8.5, is it? Like, what are we doing now?
What's so sad about that is that this is also people who are very hardcore.
Mega snobs. That's the worst part,
exactly.
Monty. This is like in cinema when the French bizarre like one? Jerry Lewis. Like, why would French snobs watch this movie and be like, that's insane. That's absolute insanity.
They probably just liked it because a French person killed Hitler.
I even hate the fact it's 11 minutes. Oh, yeah, true. There's that about Eichenthal. But even so, the idea, because remember, I'll just make this point. 11 minutes, right? A normal television, minute, 2 minutes. 11's the one where even 3 minutes in, you're like, oh, please. Okay. Oh, they love me. They just do it. Like, no, they're still going. Oh, I have created one of the great works. I bet he's never come down from the fucking high of that 11 minute. But I bet every movie since is a consequence of that 11-minute standing ovation for fucking Inglorious Bastards.
I think the French.
That's why I can't blame him, Richard. Everyone fucking told him he's a genius every second of his life. No wonder he's so self-indulgent.
I think that the French, knowing that this was thematically about the power of cinema in terms of rewriting history, that by having him die in France and the war end because of a French hero, that this would rewrite the history of France and World War II in people's minds. So clearly, that is the reason.
They should just put this movie in the French education system as part of history. Why not? Yeah, you have to watch it.
Why not? Everyone's going to think differently about France and World War II after everyone in the world sees this movie.
I mean, put it this way, obviously at this time as well, he had just come off the back of Grindhouse, which was a commercial failure. I still to this day will never understand how he persuaded people to run this as is. We're going to make 2 deliberately bad movies on fake scuffed
film.
film.
Just shows you, though, how people in Hollywood just thought this guy had the Midas touch, because I know what you mean. I even thought that premise was like, even this is good, this can't succeed. No one's really going to go watch. And no matter what Tarantino thinks, no one actually does watch Grindhouse movies, Tarantino. In fact, when you explain it, we go, oh, that's actually cooler than I thought.
Outside of America, the concept of Grindhouse has no meaning anyway, because we didn't have the midnight movies like America, places like New York, etc. did. So historically, it's got no frame of reference outside of a tiny market in the US, and yet it was marketed internationally. Also, as well, it's just worth pointing out, since we probably won't talk about Tarantino for a while now. He also, after doing Grindhouse, you know what he did next? So the legendary director Takashi Miike was making a fucking like hyper modern insane western called Sukiyaki Western Django, and Tarantino just said, "Can I be in that as an actor?" And Takashi Miike is mental, so he said, "Yeah." So he literally just come off the back of starring in a kung fu film, well, a kung fu western hybrid thing. So he gets, it's Tarantino. He does what he wants, and Inglorious Bastards is his take on a war movie. It's great. It's a great film. It's a A-tier Tarantino movie, which means it's better than most directors at their best. You just have to accept that and take it. So I'm glad we ended on that. Because I still like End Stage Tarantino. He still does it for me. He's still got the juice.
I mean, this is the best of the latter day movies. I'll give you that. This one's easily the best.
No, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You've got to rewatch it, bro. I
told you, lining up for some future episode, but it has to be framed around the idea he's going to try and convince us.
But also, by the way, if you love feet, he's knocking it out the park in that movie. So.
Okay.
All right, shall we talk about our next arc?
Yes,
Now that we've put
let's
a pin
do
in
it.
Tarantino. So we do have another arc, guys, and that is going to be
An
the
arc that
lengthy-
nearly split the podcast in twain.
Well,
Old
you know-
Monty SEO over there was like, no, we can't do this. The arc
Yeah.
designed to destroy our growth.
Yeah. This arc proves we're just real ones.
Yeah,
We're just
correct.
here for the love of the game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Love of the game.
Hey, I conceded.
This
But
will be the lowest viewed arc ever on our entire channel. I can already predict that now. I can guarantee it.
it is.
Write
So,
it in
you
a
know, we
notebook,
decided
seal it.
that
It's over.
well, why not? Why we had built up with the cyberpunk arc
Yeah.
and the Tarantino arc.
We're getting
you
too
know,
popular, if anything.
Yeah.
You know, we got too popular again. God damn it! And who recently passed away? Well, that would
And
be
everyone
Robert
enjoyed all
Duvall.
the movies too. Like we can't allow that. We've got to. The punishment must be more severe, buddy.
Yeah.
You like too many of these fans. You watch the show too much, so we have to calm the algorithm down. Make sure
Yes.
that you don't see it in your feed.
Yes.
And that we only keep the really hardcore fans, and that's Robert Duvall. And Robert Duvall, obviously, is a seminal actor, but not a name that people usually affiliate with leading men in Hollywood because he was much more of a character
Yes.
actor or a
I mean,
supporting
spoiler
actor a lot of the
already.
time.
When you hear that as a casual, you're already wrong because you're going to go, "You're wrong, Monty." I like Robert Duvall. I can't wait to watch The Godfather Apocalypse Now. They're not in this arc.
Yeah, we've
But
already
we never-
done that.
One, we've done The Godfather, and two,
Yeah.
we never even came close to putting those movies in. So actually, again, you're going to learn the hard way. You don't know Robert Duvall's career. We do, but
Yeah.
you just enjoy it if you can.
So here we go. Here is the arc in chronological order of his appearances. So we will be going in the structure of. He has a very long career, obviously, as well. So we're not even starting at the beginning of his career, not even close to the beginning of his career. In fact, we're starting in the 80s with Colors. Then will be The Apostle, followed by A Civil Action, and ending with Open Range, a Western. From
Each
recent-
film in a
Comments
different
in-
genre as well.
That none of you have ever seen any of these films. Come on, admit it. In the comments, you all have
I
to
haven't
admit
seen.
you haven't seen any.
Well,
of them.
I've seen Colors now, but I hadn't seen any
Sure.
of these. No.
Oh, it's going to be
There's
a
a couple I
banger.
haven't seen.
Also, I just want to say as well, just to time the episode, Chuck Norris has just passed away, which I didn't even think was possible.
Oh.
It's literally just happened now while we're on air.
Ah, shit.
So yeah, that's a sad one. Chuck Norris arc incoming is going to bang. So we will make up for the Robert Duvall arc with a Chuck Norris arc, all the canon greats. So there you go. I'll have to twist Monty's arm on this one, but we'll
God damn it.
we'll make it so. 4 Chuck Norris movies coming at you.
You know, we thought all those people who were clicking on our shows because they wanted to hear our takes on popular movies. Well, what if nobody clicked on our show because nobody knew the movies we were talking about? That's the next experiment. So hope you guys enjoy the Robert Duvall arc. If you'll get some great performances. Tell you that if you really care,
Yeah.
you might like this one.
Yeah, performance is great. Movies,
No, this one's a bit more homework, like I say. You know, you're going to pay your dues.
But yes, we'll be doing the Robert Duvall arc next, so you guys can look forward to that, and we'll see you next time.